A warning. This episode contains graphic descriptions of a violent crime, suicidal ideation, and men's violence against women. Listener discretion is advised.
A listener production.
At around 2 o'clock this afternoon, we received multiple phone calls about a man armed with a knife, wearing a balaclava. Over the next 6 minutes, I can only describe what would have been terrifying carnage, where the man has stabbed a 41-year-old woman in the back. That appears to be a random attack. During the next 30 minutes, an expanded crime scene has identified an unfortunate woman who is currently unidentified in a unit block, deceased.
That woman was 24-year-old Michaela Dunn, who was callously murdered in a Sydney CBD apartment on the 13th of August 2019. The killer was 20-year-old Mert Ney. Covered in blood and wielding a knife, Ney then paraded the streets of Sydney shouting Allah Akbar and daring onlookers to kill him. During the rampage, he stabbed 41-year-old woman Lynn Bowe before being dramatically chased down and apprehended by brave bystanders, famously armed with chairs and a milk crate. When police arrived and searched Ney, they discovered illicit drugs and prescription antipsychotic medication, as well as a USB thumb drive filled with disturbing content, including footage of the 2019 Christchurch Mosque massacre in his possession. In today's episode, go inside the sentencing of one of Sydney's most shocking crimes. Was Mert Ney an evil terrorist, as some called him, or was this something far more complex? This is Crime Insider's Judgements, Sydney's milk crate murder, The Crown versus Ney. Before we begin this story, I want to tell you about Michaela Kate Dunn, a much-loved sister, daughter and friend. From Sydney's inner west, Michaela was an avid traveller, mad lover of cats, and recent university graduate. Michaela's mother Joanne, who called her daughter Mickey, called her a beautiful, loving woman and God's best gift. In 2021, Michaela's older sister Emily spoke to Channel 7 following her murder and said she hates talking about Mickey in the past tense. Emily said part of the tragedy is knowing Michaela could have achieved so many things, and the family will never know exactly what she may have gone on to actually achieve. Michaela worked as a sex worker from the CBD apartment where she was eventually murdered. Mert Ney had booked her services on the day he killed her. More than 12 months after Ney killed Michaela Dunn and then went on a stabbing spree in Sydney CBD, he pleaded guilty to his crimes. The 22-year-old would face 3 charges, including murder. It would take 2 years, countless adjournments, and a failed plea deal before Mert Ney finally faced the sentencing judge in the Supreme Court of New South Wales, the highest court in the state, not far from where Michaela had been murdered. Several months before the sentencing, Ney pleaded guilty to the murder of Michaela and grievous bodily harm of Lynn Bowe, meaning the need for a costly and unfairly emotional trial was waived. Ney would go straight to a sentencing hearing. With no one needing to prove that a murder had or hadn't taken place, this sentencing was a question of why, not what. On the 29th of March 2021, Crown Prosecutor Craig Everson gave opening statements in a sentencing hearing on behalf of the State of New South Wales versus Mert Ney. Representing Ney was Belinda Rigg, SC, the first woman ever appointed as New South Wales Senior Public Defender. Both were later involved in the high-profile Chris Dawson case, Everson as Crown Prosecutor and Rigg representing Dawson. Presiding over the matter was Justice Peter Johnson, who'd been sworn in as a judge of the Supreme Court of New South Wales in 2005. Justice Johnson was known for many things: his thorough attention to detail, his love of the written word, and refusing to shake the hand of Chopper Read, which Chopper made a point of in one of his books. So, what exactly happened on that tragic day in August 2019? CCTV captured most of Ney's movements in the hours before and after the murder and was played to the court. 10:46 a.m. Ney leaves his Western Sydney crisis accommodation carrying a 20-centimetre kitchen knife in his bag. Just under an hour later, Ney jumps the ticket gate and boards a train from Blacktown Station headed to the Sydney CBD. He's seen using his phone intently, with nothing unusual about his manner or appearance. 12:25 p.m. Ney gets off the train at Town Hall Station, jumps the ticket gate, and heads to a nearby library. Almost half an hour later, Ney texts a colleague of Michaela's requesting to book a 30-minute girlfriend experience in 25 minutes' time. They agree on the $250 fee, even though Ney has only $2 cash and no credit card. He made these arrangements without difficulty, with no apparent signs of mental impairment. At 1:06 that afternoon, Ney leaves the library and heads back to Town Hall Station, where he makes the 2-minute train ride to Wynyard Station. After some time trying to locate the apartment where he'd arranged to meet Michaela, he finds it and presses the buzzer. 1:44 p.m, Michaela texts her colleague.
He just buzzed.
Ney makes his way up in the lift to the 4th floor apartment. Michaela meets him in the front room of the unit, where they are alone. Michaela asks Ney a number of times if he is okay. In an effort to, quote-unquote, make her be quiet, Ney stabs Michaela in the neck, then her face and limbs over 30 times. Ney was taller and heavier than Michaela, but this didn't stop her from putting up a fight, evidenced by extensive defensive wounds on her hands and forearms. Michaela died quickly as a result of what Justice Johnson described as a cruel, brutal, and horrifying attack. Ney was not done. Just moments after he kills Michaela, he records a 10-second video on his phone. A warning: what you're about to hear is graphic and confronting.
Bro, what f***ing lie about this? Look at my f***ing hands.
Proud of himself, he holds his bloody hand up to the camera.
Bro, I'm not lying. I f***ing look at my f***ing hands. My f***ing shoes. I'm not f***ing bro. I actually f***ing did it.
Ney then turns to the camera and stands over Michaela's dead body.
Allah Akbar. Infidels.
1:49 p.m, Ney sends the video to his friend, Lewis McCullough, on Facebook Messenger.
Yeah, I'm a psycho. I was laughing, bro. Call cops.
Ney leaves the apartment, Michaela's lifeless body on the ground. 1:51 p.m, Ney exchanges more messages with another friend, this time on instant messaging app Snapchat. Here are two actors reading some of the exchange, with the omission of racial slurs.
Lol, let me see you knife that hoe for die on you, lol.
I left, going on terror attack in large shop.
I don't believe that.
Watch news.
1:56 p.m, Ney leaves the building via a fire escape stairwell, leaving a trail of blood behind him. On his way down, he discards a knife, one of the murder weapons used to kill Michaela. He records and sends another video to the same friend on Snapchat. Again, his functioning completely unimpaired. 1:57 p.m, Ney spends 2 to 3 minutes in an alleyway behind the building, stopping twice to use his phone and put on a balaclava he'd brought with him, not to disguise himself, but to maximise fear in members of the public going about their day in the centre of Sydney on a busy Tuesday afternoon. 1:58 p.m. Covered in blood, wearing a balaclava and wielding a knife, Ney runs out onto busy York Street. 1:59 p.m. In the ensuing havoc, a group of screaming men run past Lynn Bowe, who has just finished lunch with a friend. Among that group of screaming men is Mert Ney, who stabs Lynn in her left shoulder. Her friend is heard to scream, "Oh no, he has a knife." Staff at a nearby pub call an ambulance and Lynn is taken to hospital where she's treated for a 4-centimetre stab wound requiring 6 stitches. After the senseless attack on Lynn Bowe, Ney, still armed, continues to move through the CBD, his arm raised, index finger extended in a gesture associated with ISIS propaganda. 2 p.m. Stuck in traffic at the scene was a 7 News cameraman who captured the chilling scene. Ney runs through stationary traffic. Bystanders on the streets sprang into action, courageously pursuing Ney despite the clear danger. Ney continues on foot, climbing onto the roof of a black Mercedes, yelling and performing ISIS salutes. The driver spoke with Channel 9 in the hours after the attack to say he was an Uber driver who'd just picked up a couple in Macquarie Street when he was stopped by the fire brigade and saw men running down the street. That's when he saw Ney, covered in blood, wielding the knife, and Ney climbed onto the roof of his car. A few minutes later, he accelerated suddenly and Ney fell backwards off the car, landing on the road. Still on foot, lashing out at bystanders with the knife, Ney stops and pulls out a brown paper bag, consuming pills from a white bottle. At 2:01, the terrifying rampage finally ends, thanks to the extraordinary bravery and resourcefulness of everyday citizens. Jamie Ingram, armed with a chair, shoved the offender to the ground, causing him to drop the knife. Jason Shaw used a milk crate to pin Ney's throat to the ground. One of the firefighters struck the offender's knee with a crowbar-like tool, while another pinned him down with a chair on his chest.
That people you just stabbed, you dog! Huh? Stop. Look, I don't kill you right now. Stop. Right. You're a piece of shit. Wait for the cops. Come on, give me your phone, mate.
Police arrive at the scene and arrest Ney.
Where's the knife?
Ney is cuffed and escorted into a police vehicle, the 7 News cameraman still recording.
We're going to have multiple crime scenes. I want everywhere where everyone's located. I want the main crime scene.
2:55 p.m. Ney is transported to a nearby police station where he's assessed by paramedics. He admits to taking over 30 capsules of Valium and consuming cannabis. 3:15 p.m. Michaela's body is discovered by a friend after they became concerned she wasn't answering multiple calls and texts. Police are called. 3:30 p.m. Ney is transferred to hospital under police guard. On the way, he tells an officer,
I was hoping for the long guns to get me, but the Good Samaritan spoiled it.
5:30 p.m. New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller addresses the media.
He is, by definition, at the moment, a lone actor. Whilst we try and stop every crime from happening, there are cases that when we can't, and then often we'll be judged on our response. The response by members of the community, the heroic nature of their actions that saved countless lives, the response from police and other emergency services was first rate. But unfortunately, we have lost the life of a decent person and we have another 41-year-old woman stabbed.
You said the man was found to have information on him with terrorist ideology or reflecting terrorist ideology, but that this isn't thought to be a terror incident. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that? There was certainly information found on him about other crimes of mass casualties and mass deaths around the world. I think some of them are around North America and some are more recently around New Zealand. Now, I can say that he was known to police, but his history was unremarkable compared to the gravity of the crimes that he committed. I can say that he does have a history of mental health, but at this stage I can't expand on that. But no doubt in the coming days, the investigation will be looked closely at, not just the last couple of days, but certainly the last probably 6 months to 12 months of his life.
Coming up, we unravel the days leading up to this fateful day and uncover the troubled history of Mert Ney. So, who is Mert Ney? Born in 1998, Ney grew up in Western Sydney, was the youngest of two, and had a mostly unremarkable childhood. He attended his local high school, where he struggled academically, claimed to be bullied, and had very few friends. This seemed to be corroborated by some former classmates who described him as an odd loner, saying,
"He just had a vibe. He was just an odd person. He didn't have many friends."
Ney dropped out of school before making it to Year 10, then further spiralled into a life of instability. Unemployed and adrift, he spent his days immersed in video games, abusing both prescription and illicit drugs, and navigating a life largely devoid of close personal connections, his only relationships being transactional encounters with sex workers and perverse exchanges with friends online. At the age of 14, Ney first came into contact with mental health services. He was diagnosed and treated for anxiety, depression, and obsessive-compulsive disorder. This marked the beginning of many years of multiple psychotropic medications, attempts and refusals of treatment, and several overdoses. To the surprise of many, in July 2019, Ney visited a local mosque, expressing a sudden interest in Islam, a faith he had no prior connection to. Over the following weeks, Ney continued visiting the mosque, learning the basics of the religion. Fellow worshippers recall him appearing intoxicated, seemingly under the influence of drugs. Despite his erratic behaviour, they extended kindness, offering him guidance and assistance. A few weeks after, Ney revealed to his mum for the first time that he'd started visiting the mosque in what he called a search for peace, and that he was giving up alcohol. Only 2 days later, after returning home where he lived with his mother and sister Yazel, he then told his mother he didn't plan on returning to the mosque because he didn't like it or the people who attended it. That same day, Yazel convinced him to go to hospital after he told her he'd taken too much Lyrica, a medication prescribed for anxiety. Ney was admitted and placed in a secure room, yet somehow he managed to escape the facility. In the early hours of the morning, he returned home, vandalising his family's house and smashing his mum's phone. The commotion woke Yazel, who promptly called police before confronting Ney and screaming at him to get out of the house. Standing 8 metres down the corridor, Ney turned and ran towards Yazel, hitting her in the face and tackling her to the ground, gripping her in a headlock. Yazel was only able to free herself by biting down on his hand until he released her head. Eventually, the police arrived at the home, but not in time to apprehend Ney, who had already fled by the time they got there. That afternoon, Yazel was granted an apprehended violence order against her brother, similar to a restraining order. 2 days later, Ney visited his general practitioner, telling her he'd attempted suicide twice that week and escaped from hospital. The The doctor noted that he was very low in mood, with a sense of hopelessness in his words and body language. The doctor made a call to try and book him crisis accommodation, which made Ney suspicious that she was in fact calling emergency services. He left the doctor's office saying, and I quote, "I might just leave here and kill myself." The concerned doctor contacted both the police and acute mental health care services. 4 days later, the events of August 13 unfolded. As well as this history, the opinion of forensic psychiatrist Dr. Richard First was presented to the court. Dr. First has more than 2 decades' experience working in the New South Wales justice system, assisting the courts in the judgments of some of the state's most high-profile cases. Matthew Mallat, the nephew of the backpack murderer, wrongfully convicted baby killer Kathleen Folbig, and mother killer Jessica Camilleri. In Dr. First's opinion, Ney did not meet the criteria for the diagnosis of a major mental illness such as schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. However, he did meet the criteria for obsessive-compulsive disorder, substance use disorder, depressive disorder, and had low level of intellectual function, probably low average to borderline intellectually disabled range. Dr. First told the court that Ney should be regarded as at 13 August 2019 as a, quote, mentally disordered person, unquote, as defined in the Mental Health Act. Crown Prosecutor Craig Everson told the court that regardless of Ney's mental health and guilty plea, his actions were premeditated murder and mayhem and should result in nothing short of life behind bars. As the Crown made this argument, Ney screamed out in court about Crims killing him in jail. Justice Johnson ordered him to be quiet. Ney's defence attorney, Belinda Rigg, opposed the suggestion of a life sentence, pointing out that Ney was only young and had mental health issues, arguing that he had, quote, a lot of opportunity to address his problems. While there was no strong evidence of links to any terror groups or ideologies, Mr. Everson said Ney was involved in his own violent jihad. Mr. Everson put it to Ney that this was a planned suicide mission, to which he responded, "I have no views of extremist things." Ney insisted he was not an extremist and was only playing terrorist to ensure police would kill him, getting frustrated at repeated suggestions to the contrary. When Ms. Rigg asked him how he now felt about the murder, he responded, "F***ing shit, it was all pointless and selfish." Justice Johnson had something else to take into consideration. The victim impact statement of Lynn Bowe, voiced here by an actor. And before the podcast is over, you'll hear from the family of Michaela Dunn.
I'm still hugely afraid of going back into the city where the attack happened. I can't look for work in the city. I was hunted like an animal.
The judgment. On the 14th of May 2021, Ney was finally sentenced for the grave crimes of violence he committed on the 13th of August 2019.
This was a cruel, brutal and terrifying attack made for no reason. Put shortly, the offender is a dangerous man and continues to be a dangerous man.
Michaela's mother, Joanna, sobbed as Justice Johnson read out his judgment.
It was his plan to confront a young woman in a private and secluded setting for the purpose of murdering her. That is exactly what he did.
One of the key arguments in this hearing was whether Ney had carried out a terrorist attack or not.
He took on the trappings, gestures and language of a terrorist. All who saw him would be forgiven for concluding that he was a fixated person with a commitment to a terrorist cause involving violent jihad. However, the evidence does not support such a conclusion. However, the conduct of the offender remains especially grave.
The other key points of contention, the state of Ney's mental health at the time of the attack.
I am satisfied that the offender's mental health issues contributed to the commission of the murder offence.
And therefore, it would be inappropriate to impose a life sentence. Justice Johnson also took into account Ney's guilty plea, culminating in a further 10% reduction on his sentence.
Would the offender please stand? Mert Ney, you are convicted of the offence of the murder of Michaela Dunn and the offence of wounding Lynn Bowe with intent to cause grievous bodily harm. I sentence you to an aggregate term of imprisonment for a term of 44 years.
As Ney was led away from the courtroom down through the docks, a friend of Michaela shouted, "You monster," at him. In his judgment, Justice Johnson described Ney's prospects of rehabilitation as, quote, "It would seem he was correct." Since his sentencing in 2021, Mert Ney has been charged with several violent offences whilst incarcerated, with 23 separate incidents tallied by prison officers. On the 15th of October 2021, there was a minor fire inside Ney's prison cell. As a result, 2 officers escorted him to the jail's medical clinic for smoke inhalation. Once in the clinic, still handcuffed, Ney lunged at one of the officers. The officers further restrained him, laying him down on a bed. Ney then turned his head and spat directly into the face of the officer he'd just lunged at. This crime added another 15 months to his 44-year sentence. In June 2022, Ney set fire to his jail cell by stuffing aluminium foil into an electrical power point. On the 5th of July 2024, whilst housing Goulburn Supermax, New South Wales' most secure prison, Ney assaulted a prison officer in the jail's high-risk management unit using a makeshift weapon. In December 2024, whilst incarcerated in the same unit, he had to be subdued with tear gas after appearing in court via audio-visual link because he jumped onto a computer desk brandishing a shiv, a homemade prison weapon. Prison sources told the Daily Telegraph newspaper Ney had also threatened to take officers hostage, thrown coffee at staff and boiling water at an inmate, and was known as Supermax's problem child. Ney has also been attacked while behind bars. In 2022, he was stabbed in the head and face 6 times by another inmate while in the prison exercise yard. Currently, Ney classifies as a high-risk restricted inmate and is required to be escorted and held in segregation or isolated for extended periods. He's also been involved in multiple incidents of self-harm, including swallowing batteries and razor blades in what has been described as, quote, a form of manipulation when his will is denied. Still, in October 2023, Ney's sentence for the murder of Michaela and wounding Lynn Bowe with intent to cause grievous bodily harm was reduced on appeal. Ney appealed Justice Johnson's sentence on 5 grounds, namely that his reasons were 1. Inadequate to determine what unwarranted double counting on sentence meant in relation to Mr. Ney's mental health issues, 2. Erred in failing to take into account that Mr. Ney's custodial sentence was likely to be more onerous due to his mental health, 3. Erred in their assessment of Mr. Ney's demeanour, 4. Erred in failing to take into account Mr. Ney's youth other than for the purpose of considering a life sentence, and 5. That the sentence was manifestly excessive. 2 of the 5 grounds were upheld by the New South Wales Supreme Court of Criminal Appeal. It was concluded that Justice Johnson made an error when he did not disclose how Ney's mental health was considered with respect to how it may make prison more onerous for him. However, the court ultimately rejected claims that the initial sentence failed to properly consider his purported empathy and remorse for the crime. Ney's sentence was reduced from 44 to 40 years. He will now be eligible for parole in October 2050. To end this episode, I want to leave you with some excerpts read out by Michaela's mum, Joanna Dunn, in court. These are her words, not her voice.
We have not just lost our daughter, but we have lost our future as it should have been. I want people to understand that Mickey could have been their daughter. She was just the girl next door. I miss her beautiful eyes looking at me. I miss the touch of her hands. I miss our conversations and even our arguments. I constantly wonder the emotions Mickey would have encountered at the time of her attack. How she would have faced her attacker, her perpetrator, with courage. How she would have fought for her life. It seems so wrong that the perpetrator will continue on with his life at the end of his sentence. He will once again get to experience the simple things in life we all take for granted. To feel the rain on his face, the wind in his hair, celebrating his 40th birthday and maybe the birth of a child. All things that have been stolen from our beautiful daughter. I don't want an angel. I want her here in person. Michaela Kate Dunn. Say her name out loud, proudly.
This story included mentions of suicide and self-harm. If you're doing it tough and feel you may need to speak to someone, call Lifeline on 13 11 14. Thanks for listening to Crime Insiders Judgements. We love hearing your feedback, so please rate and review this episode. If you have a case you want us to cover, let us know via Instagram at LiSTNR Crime or TikTok at LiSTNR Crime Team. This episode was narrated by me, Dan Mullins. Produced and scripted by Holly Mitchell, Dan Mullins and Jade Murray. Sound design by Link Kelly. This series was recorded and produced on Gadigal land.